Holiday traditions vary around the world. You've probably heard of Krampus, an evil counterpart to Santa from Germany. The United States has its own wacky variety of holiday traditions, and the one that the rest of the world probably knows the most about and thinks is the craziest would be the Black Friday rush to buy gifts right after Thanksgiving. There's Day of the Dead, which seems kind of weird to people outside of the Catholic faith or the Mexican tradition of celebrating those who have passed on by depicting skulls everywhere. But today we're going to be talking about my favorite holiday tradition. That would be the erecting of a large straw goat in the middle of the town square of Gävle, Sweden. Gävle is spelled G-A-V-L-E, and I apologize for my pronunciation of Gävle, but that's the closest I can get to saying it right. Welcome to The Absurds, my name is GiBi. Gävle is famous worldwide thanks to their giant Christmas goat, but it's not the building of the goat that we're looking at, it's the curious case of its destruction. The Gävle goat is constructed annually by the people of Gävle in their town square, and it has been a tradition since 1966. The goat is made of straw, and its construction usually begins on the first day of Advent, which in the Christian calendar is 4 weeks before Christmas. The goat is meant to stand tall throughout the holiday season as a festive ornament, kind of like the tree in Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. Goats are a symbol of Christmas time in Sweden. Santa Claus is often depicted riding a goat instead of a sleigh there. The first goat constructed in 1966 was 43 feet tall and 23 feet long, and on January 1st, 1967, it was burned down. The identity of this first arsonist was not publicly available, but he was convicted of vandalism, and his actions would leave an impact on the legacy of the town goat for generations to come. The next 2 years, 1967 and 1968, the goat survived. But these 2 years of glorious peace would prove to be some of the very few years where nothing of note happened to the goat. On December 1st, 1969, the goat was once again burned down, as it had been the first year it was constructed. In 1970, the goat was burned down 6 hours after it was finished being built by drunken teenagers. In 1971, the goat was smashed to pieces before Christmas Day. After 3 years of failures in a row, the town gave up building the yearly goat, but a local school decided to carry on the tradition. They fared no better. In 1972, the school's goat collapsed. In 73, the entire thing was stolen. In 74, it burned down. In 1975, it collapsed again. In 76, it was hit by a car. In 77, it surprisingly burned down. And in 78, it was kicked to pieces. None of the culprits were caught. In 1979, the goat was torched before it was even finished being built. They decided after all these failures to start fireproofing the goat, so they rebuilt it with this new security measure in mind. The rebuilt fireproof goat was dismantled and broken into pieces. In 1980, the goat was burned on Christmas Eve. In 1981, the goat miraculously survived, the first time it had made it through the holiday season since 1968. 1 year later, on December 13th, 1982, the goat was promptly burned down again. In 1983, the goat's legs were destroyed. In 1984, it was set ablaze. In 1985, the goat was protected by National Guardsmen and soldiers from the local infantry in Gävle. A 6.5-foot fence was erected around the goat. It was burned down anyway. In 1986, the town decided to start building their own goat again. I don't know what made them think it was a good idea, but they tried their best, and it didn't even make it until Christmas Eve. It was burnt down on December 23rd, 1986. In 1987, the goat was heavily fireproofed. It burnt down. In 1988, people began to gamble on the fate of the goat. With such low odds, you would have made a fortune betting that the goat would survive, because it did just that for the first time in 6 years. In 1989, the goat was burned down as it was being built. The public raised money to have it rebuilt, and the second goat was promptly burned again. In 1990, volunteers guarded the goat day and night, and it survived. They probably should have continued this effort in 1991 because it was burned down again on Christmas Eve. In 1992, a goat terrorist struck the town of Gävle 3 times. In one night, he burned down both the goat in the town square and the goat built by the school. The town rebuilt their goat, and he burned it down again on December 20th. He was caught and served time in jail. This was also the year that the town created an official goat committee. In '93, the school's goat was featured in the Guinness Book of World Records for its size, standing at 49 feet tall. Both goats survived that year, and the following year. In 1995, the goat was burned down on Christmas Day. Starting in '96, the goat was monitored by webcams around the clock. This helped keep it safe for 2 years, although, ironically, it was damaged by fireworks in '96. In '98, the goat was burned down due to a major blizzard. In '99, the town's goat was burned within a couple hours of its completion. The school's goat was also burned. At the turn of the millennium, the goats were miraculously spared fire damage. Instead, the school's goat was tossed into a nearby river. That's much better. In 2001, the school's goat was burned again, but the more interesting story is that of Lawrence Jones, who burned the town goat with just a small lighter. If you think that name sounds kind of odd for a Swedish fellow, that's because he's from Ohio. Lawrence had been in Gävle visiting friends, and during dinner at a local diner, they told him the curious case of the goat being burned down almost every year. Lawrence thought it would be amusing if the goat burned down while he was in town, so that he could claim to his friends back home that he had been the one to burn it. As they left the restaurant, Lawrence walked over to the goat, and I'm just gonna let him speak for himself. This quote was spoken in English, translated into Swedish, and then translated back into English, so it sounds a little weird, but this is what he said. I stood there for a moment, admiring the goat. Its vastness and the beautiful lighting. That's when it struck me that it was actually not certain that the goat would burn this year. I might not be able to present myself as a goat burner. I stepped over the fence and stood under the belly of the goat, right next to its hind legs. I pulled and pulled to get a straw from the goat. I managed to get a straw from one of the legs, but it still stuck to the goat. I clicked on the lighter that just this time produced an unusually large flame. Thatched straw caught fire. In the US, we have a saying called Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. The moment I lit the flame, Murphy's Law came into force. With my hand, I tried to stifle the fire, but it was in vain. I stood frozen in the ground and watched the flame spread up along the leg of the goat. My intention had been to burn a single straw, quickly extinguish the fire, and walk away with the feeling of having burnt the goat in a symbolic way. The judge's assessment and conclusion in the trial against me seems perfectly reasonable. He said, "The truth is, well, the goat is being built to be able to burn. Mr. Jones, you're free, but we will not give you back your lighter." It had been said that the goat was fireproof. Whatever it was you used to fireproof the goat that year, I want to say, don't use it again. It did not work. Lawrence was fined and set free, but he returned to America without paying his fine and seems to have a good attitude about the event. Lawrence wrote in a column in 2003 discussing his run-in with the goat. "I smiled when I heard the news about the latest goat burn. A small tear ran down my cheek as I looked at an old postcard that one of my students in Gävle gave me. It represents the goat. Me and the goat are in a close relationship with each other. It is as if we were an old friend or an old enemy, hard to decide which. It's a love of hate that I think I share with the residents of Gävle, the ones who built the goat every year just to have it burned up during one of the dark nights. Legends and myths flourish around the goat. Is the goat burning a tradition, or is it a crime?" Perhaps because it needed a break from the previous year's hilarity, the goat was spared in 2002. In 2003, the goat burned down. In 2004, the goat burned down. In 2005, 2 men, one dressed as Santa Claus and the other dressed as a gingerbread man, shot a flaming arrow at the goat and it burned down. They were featured on the Swedish equivalent of the FBI's Most Wanted television show. These images come from a reenactment for that show. In 2006, the little goat that could survived all the way to January 2nd, when it was taken away and stored in a secret location. In 2007, the goat was burned. In 2008, 10,000 people showed up to the unveiling of the goat. The town had decided not to use flame repellent on it that year because it made the goat look ugly. They wanted it presentable for this massive crowd. Needless to say, it was burned down. In 2009, goat burners DDoS attacked the security webcams, and while they were down, they burnt down the town goat. The school's goat was stolen in a pickup truck that year. In 2010, one of the goat's guards was bribed to leave his position, but he held steadfast in his belief that the goat should not be burned, and so, due to his principles, the goat survived. In 2011, the goat was sprayed with water to create a protective layer of ice, but that month was abnormally hot and the ice melted. The town and the school goats were both burned. In 2012, the goat burned. In 2013, the goat was covered in flame-retardant chemicals and then burned. In 2014, the goat survived 3 different arson attacks. But the school goat collapsed. In 2015, the town spent around $100,000 on the goat, which was burned down by a drunk man who was arrested shortly after. Despite having a singed face, smelling of gasoline, and being visibly drunk, he initially denied doing anything wrong. When he sobered up, he admitted that burning the goat was, quote, an extremely bad idea. In 2016, the 50th anniversary of the goat tradition, the town threw the goat a birthday party. It was burned down the very same day. It was replaced with a smaller goat built by local high schoolers, which was later hit by a car. The goat survived 2017 and 2018, and now has a dedicated Twitter account that live tweets the status of the goat. In 2018, someone entered the goat's enclosure because they really had to go to the bathroom, but the goat was spared. The goat burning has become such a problem that the town orders more straw than is necessary in case they need to rebuild the goat. In the long history of the town, only 4 people have been caught vandalizing the structure. The man who came up with the idea for the goat, Stig Gävle, passed away in 2018. That year, the goat survived an attempt to burn it down. Perhaps Stig will be able to rest easy, knowing the tradition of destroying the goat will continue no more. Or maybe it'll burn down again. That year, the goat was erected on Thanksgiving, November 28th, 2019. 2 guards patrolled the goat frequently, 24 hours a day, along with a unit of dogs. Unfortunately, the college goat was burned in the early hours of December 27th.
Another one. Another one. Another one. Another one. Another one. And another one.
What had that goat ever done to me? It was completely against the way of the Jedi. I was just going to pretend to try so that they could see it wouldn't work and they would forget about it. But then, as I sat there, I felt this pulse inside me. I couldn't stop it. Maybe deep down inside, some dark part of me wanted to see if I could do it. Every night I would dream about that goat, its mouth opening and closing without making a sound.
In 2020, the town of Gävle live-streamed coverage of the goat, and while this hour-long presentation is mostly in Swedish, I did watch the whole thing, and didn't understand almost any of it. I'm glad I did watch it though, because I found this gem. No, not that. They played a few segments where Americans called in to talk about the goat. And just watch how sweet this is.
I'm Mary Anderson. I lived in Sweden as an exchange student in 1981. Yeah, I fell in love with the goat then.
I met Marianne, 26 years ago?
What? I can't hear you out of my left ear.
and she always talks about the goat. So it's she brought me to the goat about 3 years ago.
When we were here 3 years ago, Tim said something about being in the land of Christmas. And I'm like, yeah, I think this is it.
I think the goat is the president of that land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moving past that couple, here's another American couple who called in because they're such big fans of the goat, and they seem really interesting. John Oman is the madman who began to build his own 10-foot Gävle goat, or Gävlebacken, in 2014. He claims he started watching the live webcam feeds of the goat in his spare time back in 1996. If you remember from earlier, that was the first year they used a webcam. The goat also burned down that year, meaning he got to see history of the goat in the making. This man is an OG goat watcher.
Den här gången heter de Eileen Arnold och John Oman. De är med oss från Chicago, the Windy City där de bor. Hello guys, welcome to Gävle.
Hello.
Hi. And I can tell that you got a bit of a Gävle book yourself there behind you.
We do, for the last 6 years.
So how do you celebrate the julbock at this time of year, especially during these times? I know that you usually invite friends over.
We do. So last night we did a Zoom party, and we had probably 50 people on the Zoom party as we celebrated our goat.
And how come the love for the Gävle book?
I've been following him for 15 years or so. Always watch the webcam. I love to watch it in the morning, at the night, during the day. And so 6 years ago, I decided to build a goat. So that goat is behind us now.
But you have been here in Gävle, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah?
We did in
The
2016 for the 50th.
All right, the dark year, when we just had it for a couple of hours.
Yes.
Yes, because then we watched it burn outside the hotel room. That was quite sad.
In 2017, he threw a post-Thanksgiving party for his neighborhood to unveil the goat, and 60 people celebrated his single-handed craftsmanship. John also hired a Santa Claus impersonator to come to the party, and he would serve Swedish meatballs to his guests. Since he started making the goat, he's lived in North Carolina, Virginia, and Chicago. And he's been introducing more and more people to the Swedish tradition of the straw goat. But he doesn't have a great track record with the real goat. Like I said earlier, the first year he watched it on the webcam, it burned down. He was in Gävle for the 50th anniversary in 2016, along with 50,000 other people for that year's goat unveiling. He was staying in a hotel near the goat that actually overlooked the plaza, and so he was able to watch it burn down mere hours after it being unveiled. Oman awoke to someone shouting in English. I heard the words, "Hey, stop, you," he said. That seems strange to me. I've obsessively been following the goat, he said. I still do it to this day. His wife, Eileen, who works as a government contractor, added, I'm married into his goat obsession. So far, nothing bad has happened to any of John's goats. And if anybody ever takes anything away from this precious man, I swear to God, you'll wish you had the mercy of meeting the same fate as the goat. In January 2021, the Gävle goat was disassembled and removed from the town square, having survived for the 4th year in a row. This continues the trend of the longest period of survival for the goat. There was no normal inauguration that year, as travel to the town was down due to COVID-19. The goat had survived every year since the death of Stig Gävlen, the man who first proposed its construction. However, that peace didn't last long. In 2021, the goat can be seen on this 24/7 webcam burning to the ground. You can see 2 figures walk toward the goat, and then smoke, and then ooh, fire, it's gone. From a couple other YouTube videos, you can see the charred remains of the goat. According to the New York Post, during its 53-year-long history, the goat has survived the Yuletide season unscathed only about 15 times. Then they get a quote from someone who's legitimately upset about the goat burning. Even though the majority of the people who follow this story kinda like it when the goat burns, even the official Twitter account for the goat makes jokes about the goat burning. An unnamed man in his 40s was arrested in connection with the blaze, according to reports. On November 27th, 2022, the Gävle goat was erected in Gävle, Sweden, and as usual, the city created an entire show to go along with the unveiling ceremony, including pre-filmed and live segments. These are the highlights. The absolute best part of the show, and I wish I had some way of knowing what this guy's name was, but the best part of the show was this little guy who's basically the host of the whole thing, and he was just so energetic throughout the whole night. And he was up there, he was singing, he was giving interviews, and he was just dancing along the whole time. The best part is when he lost his spot in the song he was singing and just kind of mumbled along with the general tune of what he was supposed to be saying and then tried to find his spot again. He's so full of energy, and I just love his enthusiasm.
Och bjuder på Santa Claus is coming to town!
And then I have no idea what's supposed to be happening here.
Alltså vilket ös, eller hur?
The camera guy also got totally lost at one point.
Och vi ska vara tacksamma för att vi lever på en sådan här plats som idag.
This guy is actually on America's Got Talent, or at least I think that's what they said, because I don't speak Swedish, but his voice is beautiful, and he's an amazing performer, and for some reason, right as he starts to sing Imagine, this guy just starts taking pictures from, like, behind him, from the side of his head. It's really funny. The festivities ended without much fanfare, and after that, we're just greeted to this screen that I can't read. I gotta say, ending your Christmas celebration with a song where the singer wishes that there was no religion is a bit of a power move, but I'm not Swedish, so I don't know. Also, there's this. The goat would survive in 2022, although that's perhaps because he was placed in a new location, as the square it normally resided in was under construction. In 2023, the goat was erected on December 3rd, and once again the event was live-streamed. We get an animated intro to the goat, and while I don't speak any language that isn't English, I can gather that they're talking about the size of the goat, the fact that the goat is famous worldwide, and how often it burns down. The festival starts again with a concert. These guys seem really cool. Here we get our first unveiling view of the goat. The crowd greets the goat and the festivities continue.
Ger vi handen och så hälsar vi på Gävlebocken, okej? Så det är 1, 2, 3. Hej Gävlebocken!
The singer starts what I'm guessing is a classic Christmas song and then goes into the crowd and gives the mic to a small child to sing a line, which is very sweet.
Hej mitt vinterland, nu är jag här. Nu biter frosten i.
Again, I'm not familiar with the song, but in the chat, the official Gävle account links to the lyrics. The link is unfortunately now broken, but I'm pretty sure the phrase all song, all sang, is the equivalent of the English phrase sing-along. So that's not the song's title, that's just a link to a sing-along. These people in the chat have a conversation about the goat coming to life when people aren't watching, which obviously cannot happen because of the 24/7 live stream. Stupid internet ruins another thing, ruins the ability for the straw goat to come to life and go on a murder spree. They reference Five Nights at Freddy's and allude to the goat going on a killing spree down. The Sodium Dance Crew gets on stage and replaces the Christmas carols with this.
In the middle, I'm a rebel, yeah I am. Spit my dummy out from my rattle like the pram. Deliver in the morning like I was a postman or a milkman. Lyrically, I can choke slam.
People in the chat start complaining that this isn't Christmassy, and when I was a kid, this kind of thing always really annoyed me, because it never appealed to me and I thought it was pandering. But now that I'm, like, a real adult, I appreciate that these people are having fun and developing a real talent, and they're just glad to be performing. Yeah, this isn't traditional Christmas music, but I don't think there's anything more Christmassy than a town allowing their local youth to come up and perform in front of people.
Alva, Milla, Hanna, Sigrid, Eve, Denise.
They're expressing themselves to their community. The festival ends with... you wouldn't believe me if I just told you, so have a listen. If you were hoping for a happy ending to this goat, you'd be disappointed. Due to a particularly rainy growing season, the straw used to construct the goat had an unusually high number of seeds, which attracted local birds to peck at and eat the goat as time went on. This is foreshadowed in the live stream by the Gävle account itself. The hilarious Wikipedia article on the Gävle goat states that this goat was pecked to pieces by jackdaws, a local species of crow. The video you are seeing now comes from the 24/7 live feed of the goat. These pictures are from the official Gävle goat page. It appears there was nothing that could be done about the bird issue, and the goat was just a lost cause this year. This video should be going up only a few weeks before the 2024 goat ceremony. As always, I will be covering the goat's unveiling, and in January, covering its fate. Please stay tuned to this channel for more of the goat. I've been covering this story for many years now in real time, and I appreciate you watching this remastered compilation of my old reporting. For future videos on this topic, and more things like this, please subscribe to GiBi's Good Idea, Bad Idea. This video was made with the support of my backers on Patreon. A link to my Patreon is in the description below, and I also have channel memberships available. I would never ask that anybody who doesn't have disposable income donate to my channel, or any YouTuber really. If you're under 18, if you have student loans, there's no reason for you to give money to people who make videos on YouTube. But I would very much like to shout out those people who do allow these videos to get made. Klaus, Eliza, Halmar, Lauren, Morgan, Nan, Rhiannon, Rosebud, Scott, Sophie, Thomgata, Am Hidden, Haley, Jinx, Jose, Just That Spark, Rolo, Shadowmaster, Tanner McCoolman, and Genie. Thank you for watching. Be sure to be nice to each other in the comments, consider supporting the creators you admire, and never lose sight of the things that are important to you. In 1992, a terrorist goat struck... I meant goat terrorist. A terrorist goat.